We'd like to thank Mainspring Companies for sponsoring Season 1 of The Next Entrepreneur. Mainspring celebrates the entrepreneurial journey, and we are very grateful for their support.
I went to a mergers and acquisition big training seminar actually it was in Beverly Hills. I remember it extremely, of all places, Beverly Hills. And I'm sitting there and we're going through this class, and I tell this gentleman, I said, look, man, he says, well, what's your story? So I got this engineering business, we family-owned business. We've been in business 100 years. I think that's about what it was at the time. And he looked at me and goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're here. I can help you. I can help you sell this business. I'm like, okay, I'm in the wrong spot.
Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today with our producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions, and our guest today is Mr. Kenny Smith, President and CEO of T. Baker Smith. Kenny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. Excited to be here with you today.
So TBS is a 107-year-old engineering firm headquartered in Houma, Louisiana. And so a couple of things. First off, Kenny, I am a huge fan of yours. For everything that you've done in business and community involvement and philanthropy is just something that I find incredibly impressive, and I'm honored for you to be here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, sitting next to you, and have helped you with your foundation throughout the past.
You've been very generous, and we appreciate that. Second thing is, I read the book of your company, A Century of Solutions. And you may think that a book about a 100-year-old engineering firm might be a bit of a sleeper, but it is not. It's a fascinating book. I read every word of it, every page of it. And I came up with a very clear thought about halfway through the book that this really should be the basis of a college course on an MBA program. And, if you consider that 20% of all businesses fail within the first year, 30% in the second year, 50% within 5 years, and 70% in 10 years, and you guys have been in business for 107 years, and you have weathered literally hurricanes, the Great Depression, the Great Recession, oil busts of, numerous counts. It's really, really impressive. And the book doesn't gloss over the ups or the downs, right? I mean, the economic downs are a reality for everyone. And it just does a great story about talking about survival during those times. And man, there's so much to learn from this book. So really, really impressed with that. And I walked away with this thought that TBS survived all because of the Smith family traits of adaptability, resiliency, and innovation. And so it's definitely worthy of an in-depth study for an MBA program. And so congrats on really doing a fascinating book.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We turned 100 years old in 2013, and my father, Clifford, who is second generation. Well, first off, T. Baker Smith was my grandfather.
Right.
Not just a name. A lot of people just know a name.
Right.
But he started the firm, actually got out of Tulane University in 1913. And several folks said, okay, Baker, what you going to do now? And he said, well, I'm going back to the bayou. You got to realize in 1913 to go from New Orleans to Tulane back down the bayou in Houma, Louisiana in Terrebonne Parish, you actually had to go all the way back up the river to Donaldsonville and come back down. So they were like, Baker, why are you going? What's an engineer going to do in Houma, Louisiana? But he came back and started practicing his profession in 1913. And very proud that here we are. almost in 2020, and we're still here.
Yeah.
Still owned by the same family. And, I appreciate your compliments on that. That's what I tell
Well,
folks.
look, it's so rare. I mean, it's so incredibly rare. And it's a great thing to see. But let's talk about who TBS is today. That the growth from this picture, this image of Baker, your grandfather, in the swamps in the early 1900s to where you are today is in 2020. The market served and their services and your offices. Can you give us an overview of TBS today?
I can. Yeah. So TBS is we're a group of engineers, surveyors, and environmental scientists that have somehow come together to try to provide solutions or help our clients. We offer so many different services. We really take pride in trying to be what we call a true trusted advisor of our client. There's not much that a client can ask us to do that we won't find a sub or bring a consultant on. We'll make it happen for them. And today we serve 5 main markets. We still to this day help people build and maintain pipelines. Actually, on the picture on the book, that is my grandfather in the marshes south of Montague, Louisiana, building a pipeline for United Gas Pipeline. Okay. That line is still in service today. I know exactly where it is. So we still do a lot of pipeline work. We still help people drill and produce oil and gas. We do a lot of industrial based work now. And then we do some public works, both local, state, and federal public works. And we do a little land development, both commercial and residential development. So very diverse firm. Yeah. That's on purpose. Right. Some people say, only pick one thing and only do one thing and be the absolute best. I read the book. I studied the book. I just don't do that. That's not our MO. And I'll tell you why, because one of the things that was drilled in from my grandfather to my father and to me is we will not have all our eggs in one basket. It's not going to happen. We're going to be spread out with a region. It's not as chaotic as I make it sound. Right. There are goals, objectives. There are core focuses, but it's pretty diverse on purpose.
Geographic reach.
Yeah. So we're still rooted corporate-wise in Houma, Louisiana. Why? Because that's where I was born and raised.
That's home for you.
Home for me. But we have a facility in Thibodaux, Covington, the North Shore. We have a facility here in Baton Rouge and Prairieville. We have a facility in Lafayette, also in Stafford, Texas. We've got a few people working in Dallas, a couple people working in San Antonio, and recently we opened up an office down. Actually, it's next to Corpus in Rockport, Texas. You got to make sure you give Rockport credit. They don't want to be called Corpus, by the way. I learned that. Right. And then the latest one, about 6 weeks ago, we opened up a facility in Galveston, Texas.
Wow. And you call your people who work for you associates.
We do.
Right. And how many associates do you have now?
We are at 240 associates. The idea of there's a story behind all of these things. So in my mind, and we're all about people. All about people. I know you've read in the book, but absolutely, we love to hire what we call the right people, which is a good cultural fit for the firm, and give them every opportunity to grow and expand. So an employee works for you, an associate works with you. Oh, yeah. That's our one of Kenny's quirky deals. So, but we were at 240 today. Been a tough year, so we're down about 40 people. Some of them went left on their own. Some of them we had to make some tough economic decisions here in 2020.
Yes, brutal.
But the good news is for right now today, I do see a light, or maybe the level of uncertainty is not as dark as it was 3 to 4 months ago.
I agree with you on that, and I can feel it.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with this story you told me a couple of years ago. I think you had been to a seminar, and maybe it was a merger and acquisition seminar, and an investment banker was talking to you about your company or something relating to that. You know what story I'm talking
I
about?
know, I remember it very well.
Yeah, can you tell that?
So this was actually part of YPO, right? So Young Presidents Organization, which I was a part of for quite a while until I got too old and they booted me out.
You're not young anymore.
Not young anymore. And went to a mergers and acquisition big training seminar in actually it was in Beverly Hills. I remember it extremely. Of all places, Beverly Hills. And I'm sitting there and we going through this class and I tell this gentleman, I said, look, man, he says, well, what's your story? So I got this engineering business, we family owned business. We've been in business 100 years. I think that's about what it was at the time. And he looked at me and goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're here. I can help you. I can help you sell this business. I'm like, okay, I'm in the wrong spot here.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Maybe there's an acquisition here that we can work on, but no, I'm not here to learn how to sell the business.
I mean, he had no concept of a generational operating company and the pride that the Smith family has in that. And
so there's only three parts to the business. It's the beginning, the middle, and when you sell it. That's it. I was like, wow, I guess so, but we're gonna let somebody else worry about that other part right now.
Yeah.
So.
But what's impressive on top of the, making it this long in business is the upward trending growth of your business, particularly over the last 20 years. Whereas I think it's more common if you have a company, that age, they tend to be a little more flatlined, having matured up to a certain point, but you guys are still cruising. So, I wanted to step back now and dive a little bit into the history, and starting with your grandfather you mentioned a few minutes ago, T. Baker Smith. And it seems as if, 1913, he's coming back to Houma, right?
Yep.
And it struck me that one of the great things that he did early on was establishing relationships with the oil companies and the wildcatters and getting into that part of the business. And it seemed as if he started onshore. And then as time progressed, it led to what I think the terminology you use in your industry is near shore, where you're getting into the marsh and the wetlands and stuff. And then ultimately TVS ends up including offshore as well. So can you talk about your grandfather's early success?
Sure. So so he got out of Tulane in 1913. There is a story behind that. They actually threw him out. Okay. He in 1913, his father, my great grandfather had 4 kids, and all 4 of his kids went to college. At that time, that was a really big deal, but that was his commitment. Actually, I think that was my great grandmother's commitment that they were going to school, and all 4 of them did. He was a star athlete in track, baseball, and football. But he had worked, I don't know how many years, and he's like, all right, thank you, but here, we're going to give you a degree. You got to go. Okay. So he came back to Houma. But what started off with the energy companies is all of a sudden they were that came to our part of the world, and most of these explorations were in the wetlands. Okay. Or back when the original government surveys came through, they didn't survey out in these off of the ridges. You realize in our part of the world, it's 5 ridges in Terrebonne Parish. And in between the ridges, they literally just protracted across. Okay. They didn't actually survey it. So all of a sudden, they actually on the maps, they labeled it as wastelands, true on the original township plats for Terrebonne Parish. And when the oil and gas companies came in and started drilling for oil, all of a sudden boundaries became very important because of the royalties. And my grandfather had developed into an expert of the resurvey of the township and range in between the ridges. Okay. And that just and he became known for that. And really that's his mark, although there's a lot that he did beyond that, but that really was his way of being an active part of the oil and gas industry.
So you actually didn't get to know him. He passed away 2 weeks after you were born.
Yes, right? I was born on June 17th in 1962. And the beginning of July, he passed away. So I never knew him, but somehow I feel like I know him pretty strong. I know he's had a lot to do, an influence on me in our business, because my dad will walk in and he's like, "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm doing this." And he's like, I remember one time, for instance, I was looking at a project. It wasn't a very good project. Okay. And I showed that to my dad, and he told me, he said, "My daddy would have threw that in the garbage." Like, so he walked out the office, and you know what I did? I threw it in the garbage. So no, that's not the type of work we do. So little things like that have been a big part of his legacy, even though I never knew him.
And your dad is Clifford.
Clifford.
And there's a story here from your book, and it is just classic. And I just wanted to read it. This is your father talking about working with your grandfather. He said, "I'll never forget. We were walking south of Montague when I was in high school, and we were running a township line from the Point Farm Ridge to Bayou Terrebonne, which was probably about 4 miles. It was pure marsh, freshwater marsh at the time, but it's a lake now. And it got to be about 11:30, so we said we're gonna have lunch. You carried your lunch in a bag, in a pack or something. You had a canteen with some water in it. You carried as little as possible because you didn't want to carry it. So I said, 'Where are we going to eat?' And my father, Baker, said, 'We're eating right here.' I said, 'Well, where are we going to sit down?' Because they're in the middle of the swamp, right? Running this line. He said, 'We aren't going to sit down. You can't sit down in the marsh. There aren't any trees or anything out here.' And it had to be 100 degrees. Then you ate your sandwich or your can of Vienna sausage, drank a little water, then hit it, partner.
Yeah.
You were cutting through the cane, and hopefully you got to the bridge. Someone was going to pick you up and take you back to your car, so you didn't have to walk back to the other side. And that's how it was."
Yeah, that's how it was. Yep.
I just love that story. I mean, there's nothing creates a clearer vision of hard work ethic. They're standing in the marsh eating their sandwich. Yeah. I just love that story.
Yeah. That's a great story. And that's one thing that has gone from generation to generation. And I hope to myself is just hard work. No doubt. The challenge I have today is that just hard work alone isn't going to get it. You actually got to be smart about what you do. But I'm surrounding myself with a lot of smart people to help make sure I'm working on the right things.
Well, I think the other trait is entrepreneurism in your family. Obviously with your grandfather starting the firm, but when you look at your father's accomplishments in the firm, and he was very entrepreneurial. And there was a story about during his tenure starting up energy helicopters in the 70s and building that up to like a fleet of like 14 aircraft. But as would be the case in so many instances, the oil bust came, and by 87 that, they kind of wiped that out. But I mean, that's a whole nother diversion, a whole nother business line, which I found really fascinating. And I'd say the other trait that I saw, continue through your family history is a love of community. And Clifford was just, he was the man about Houma and Terrebonne, and his passion for the community was just profound, to the degree that in 2005 he was appointed by President Bill Clinton to join the Mississippi River Commission, which was just fascinating.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Passion. He is one of the most passionate people I know. Had a good friend of ours tell me one time, said, "Kenny, Clifford's never going to die of a heart attack." I said, "Why you say that?" He says, "Because it's all coming out. He's not holding anything back in any conversation." And that is an understatement if you ever met him, but very passionate about his community. It's interesting in his career. So he got out of LSU and again, got out of LSU as soon as he could. He packed his bags, and guess where he went? Houma, Louisiana. His dad was really holding the business on, waiting for Clifford to get out of school. He came back and he immediately began building and expanding the Houma Terrebonne area. Be it, forced master drainage systems, utility expansion, highway expansions, all the things that engineers do. And he also became a developer. A lot of the original shopping centers, malls, he and a group of partners all put that together. Now, the interesting thing about Clifford's career is that there was a turning point, and that was towards the mid 90s, okay, where the realization that coastal land loss was now going to start threatening his community. So his career switched from expanding and modernizing his community to saving and protecting. And that was a key point. He was very engaged with quite a few elected officials, but Billy Tozan still is a very good friend of his. And he worked with Billy to say, look, we need to expand a hurricane protection system. Not just New Orleans is worth saving, but, there's this whole other community down here. And the very first thing that they ran up against was, well, Corps of Engineers can't spend any money in Terrebonne Parish because you're not in the Mississippi River Commission. It's like, okay, they started looking, and sure enough, they had carved out Terrebonne Parish wasn't in the Mississippi River Commission. And the Corps can't allocate money outside the New Orleans district, okay? And we weren't theoretically in it. So, well, how you change that? They say, it takes an act of Congress. I said, well, I know one of them. I got a congressman right here. And literally, it took a while, but with Congressman Tozan, and at the time, one of Tozan's chief aides was a guy by the name of Garrett Graves. So Garrett and my dad worked tirelessly with Congressman Tozan, and literally had a congressional act passed. And next thing you know, got Terrebonne Parish into the Mississippi River Commission. So so all of a sudden now the Corps could at least talk about Terrebonne Parish.
Yeah, it seemed that what your dad was doing so much of the time was educating the rest of the world of what was going on in Terrebonne Parish, in Louisiana, and general South Louisiana, as it related to coastal erosion, subsidence, environmental issues. And before they could, help him in any way, he had to educate him what was truly going on. He was very, very passionate about that.
And then the next thing you know, in the 2000, there was an opening on the Mississippi River Commission, and sure enough, Congressman Tozan called and said, Clifford, we're going to get you on this commission. And somehow he did. And it's interesting, he got on the commission, which is for the whole Mississippi River Valley. Right. Okay. It's kind of funny. It's the entire Mississippi River Valley, except for one spot in between down at the Gulf Coast, but they were able to change that. And remember, he got on the commission, and the commission rides the boat, literally the Corps of Engineers boat, down the Mississippi River twice a year. So they would normally come to either they go to New Orleans or they go to Morgan City. And he said, well, we going to Morgan City. He says, well, come on, we're going to take the boat all the way to Houma. And a lot of the commissioners on there said, Houma, where's that? He goes, oh, no. Y'all coming to Houma. And sure enough, they got that boat to Houma. And a typical Clifford, he was able to pull that off. Not the generals and all of that stuff. No. He would bring crawfish and shrimp and etouffee to the captain, the guy who drives the boat. And he says, hey, don't stop in Morgan City. You just keep going. You know how to get to Houma? Oh, so of course I do. So anyway, that was the type of passion and just ingenuity and drive. And a lot of the flood protection that's going on in Terrebonne Parish today, it's taken a lot of people, but it all started by getting the Terrebonne Parish inside the Mississippi River Commission, which was my dad and Congressman Tozan.
What a guy. Okay, we'll take a break right there, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank MBD Maintenance for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Maintenance is a 25-year-old company that does commercial building construction and renovations. They do tenant improvement work for retail and office. They do storm and fire damage repairs, as well as catastrophe response for natural disasters. The MBD team is simply the best. These guys are experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If MBD Maintenance can help you with your next project, you can find them online at mbdmaintenance.com. And we are back with Kenny Smith, CEO of T. Baker Smith. So, Kenny, we were talking about your father, but you start to work in the company as a young teenager, right? There's a couple of great stories from the book here. One was, just a description of you working in the wintertime out on the survey boat. Can you give us a little color on that?
Yeah. So we've had thousands of people come through the firm, especially in the survey world and the field crews that we have helped go back to school. Or there's quite a few people that's like, oh man, I went to work for your dad for one summer or something, and I decided I was going back to college. Y'all really helped me out a lot. There's 1,000 people like that, but I was a youngster, still trying to figure out which way I wanted to go. And my dad says, put me on a survey crew, which was very common for me anyway. And, we were working on a pipeline out of Gibson, going to go from Gibson, a shell plant in Gibson, down to the mouth of the Atchafalaya River. It's called the Crawfish Line. I remember like it was yesterday, but this was in the winter. And, this was way before all this modern technology. There was no GPS there. I don't think we even had an airboat at the time. We literally walked from Gibson to the mouth of the Atchafalaya for this survey, and it was cold. And, it was like, all right, boys, let's go. And said, you didn't wear boots. Okay, that was ridiculous. You're going to get soaking wet. So you wore high-topped old Converse, high-top basketball shoes, right? Because you could tie them things on, and then you just had a pair of blue jeans, and you got some duct tape, and you duct taped the ends of your boots, or all that mud and all the critters wouldn't come up in your jeans, and you just went to work. You just get it.
So you just jumped out of the boat in the morning just to get it over with.
Well, it was cold too, so there wasn't don't mess around. Just get to work, So you start tromping through that marsh, At the time, we had the old surveyor chain, and you were carrying what we call 1x1s. It's a survey stick, right? But 8 foot long, and you just, like you say, you just carry that. They put you on the bank at one bayou, and then you had to go. All right, we'll pick you up 3,000 feet on the other end. Okay, you had an instrument man on the bank with a survey instrument telling you to keep straight. They never let me run the instrument. That wasn't the case. Clifford had made sure of that. So, no. He's on the tip of the spear there.
Right.
Work that boy, and he did. And I'm so glad they did.
Yeah. Another great story where you're working with L.J. Tish, and you're surveying out a canal for an oil and gas canal. Yeah. And tell that story as to, which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. We were working, I don't remember who the company we were working for, but it was in Lake Fields, just north of Houma, and really bad marsh. I tromped through some pretty bad marsh. This was bad marsh, and it was, okay, we got to go 5,000 feet this way. They're going to dredge. This was back when they dredged canals to drill wells. And we start tromping along. You pull over. You shoot one line and literally put a stake every 200 feet for the one edge of the canal. And then you pull over 70 feet, boom, put another stake. And that's literally getting ready to dredge. And I was in this, I think I was going across 70 foot. And I fell in a hole. But it was nothing but hole. It was an alligator hole. Okay. Baby alligators. I don't know how many, but baby alligators. And LJ reaches in there and pulls me out. And I said, oh man, thanks. I didn't want them little ones to bite me. And he says, boy, don't you worry about them little ones. I'm looking for mama right now. I was looking for the mama alligator. So yeah, that was bad. That was the good old days. That was way before all this technology, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, I knew that there are going to be some great stories in there about critters in the swamps with all the work y'all do there, and that one made me crack up.
So we've been working in the swamp now, in the marsh, for 107 years, and all that time, we've had only one snake bite.
You're kidding.
No, I'm serious. It's hard to believe that,
That
right? I
is.
mean, unbelievable. I just, when you think about it, and we really weren't working. We actually for a while, we had a hunting camp.
Yeah.
And the guy was out there making duck blinds, and he got bit by a moccasin. So he's
wow.
all fine. But that's pretty amazing when you think about how much time we spent in the swamps and marshes of South Louisiana.
So you end up going to college and getting out in '86, and just like your father and his father, head back to Houma, right? But at that time, it was the worst economic time in the oil patch imaginable, right? I mean, the place was in shambles.
It was in shambles. So, yeah, I went up to Louisiana Tech, great school, fantastic education. And for a boy from South Louisiana in the 80s to go up to Ruston, that was quite a culture shock for me. But it was the best thing that ever happened. Made some lifelong friends, got a fantastic education. But you're right. I mean, the day we graduated, I had my bags packed, the cars loaded. And again, just like my grandfather, just like my dad, I was coming back to Houma, Louisiana. There was never a doubt. But that was fine and dandy until I got home. And that was in, like you said, 86. And the economy was horrible. It was absolutely, and we were down to 35 people. I remember this quite well. And my dad was doing everything he can to hold it together. He was desperately trying to get out of the helicopter business at the time, also that you mentioned earlier. And I can never forget this. He had to let somebody go to make room for me. We had a young technician, the engineering technician working for us that I knew. I knew he and his wife well, and he let him go to make room for me. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. That's such a great. I'm sorry my dad had to go through that, but what an education it was for me to really get started at such a low part, because I think it gave me a real education on business that you just can't get. I didn't get it at Louisiana Tech. I can tell you that for sure.
Well, there was one story that helped paint a picture for me for how rough it was. And I could relate to it because in 2008, when, we had our great recession here, I certainly felt the same way in my business. But there's a story of you cutting the grass. You're out of college, you're back home, you're cutting the grass around the shop.
Around the office.
Yeah. Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So we, I'm out of school. I can't wait to get started. I'm right out of college. I know everything, right? I am so ready to jump in. And it was slow. But, my dad nobody cut the grass, nothing around the shop. I said, well, I'm not going to sit around here and look for something to do. I went and found a lawnmower, and I'm going to start cutting the grass around the shop. So I go out there and I'm not cutting the grass for 5 minutes, Andrew. Boom. And that lawnmower hit a pipe or hit something in the ground, bent the shaft. Okay. I remember my dad saying, well, that's fine. We ain't fixing it. You can let the grass grow. The last thing I'm worried about is the grass. It's like, we got much bigger things to worry about, boy. Come on, let's go to work.
I mean, that just really painted a clear picture for me. Like, you're not going to waste one penny that you don't have to, and that grass could grow.
Yeah.
Look, your dad said this of you, and I thought it was really cool. He said, when I look at Kenny, I see traits of hard work, entrepreneurship, and a genuine care for the betterment of people and community, all three of which are deeply rooted from my father and grandfather. And I was like, man, how cool is that to have those words in print, for your father to say something so profound.
That was another reason we wanted to do the book, because my dad was still around. He's still around today, but then also he could tell all these stories, right? Because I didn't know my grandfather, but for him to be able to put all these stories in the book, and I guess he must have been drinking that day when somebody interviewed. No, I mean, I'm glad he was talking about today and maybe not when I was in high school.
That's
so
right.
It's a good.
That'd have been a different.
That'd have been a little different description, but I think I definitely learned hard work from him. No doubt. I can, at a young age, I don't know if I told you the story, but we have 7 kids in our family, right?
You're one of 7.
I'm one of 7. Yeah. So I'm the oldest son. I have 2 older sisters, but I'm the oldest son. So about the time I was 8 years old is when I started going to T. Baker Smith. And it's because my mom would tell Clifford, he's aggravating all the girls. Get him out of here. Go. And Clifford grad, 8 years old, I was over there washing cars, emptying garbage cans, helping the mechanic. We had a mechanic. That's where I learned all my cuss words early in life, was helping a mechanic in the back, uh, but it literally is, and honestly, even going up in high school, I was maybe not typical teenager. I was a little rambunctious, but there was no doubt that, where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do.
So the economy gradually comes back. The business gradually stabilizes again. And it took a while, right? But, and then you began to do your career of being an engineer, and you did a lot of furthering your education and getting all your surveying and licenses and everything. But there's a point in 97, so you'd been back a good 10, 11 years, where your mother and father take a trip around the world, an extended trip. They're gone a couple of months, I believe. Right. And now TBS is in your hands at this point. And it seemed like that was kind of the test. It's like, is Kenny ready for the next step? How did that go?
Yeah. It was, that was about the time. So first off, my career, I was so blessed. First off, I had my dad, who was also my professional mentor and my boss. Okay. So he knew me extremely well, and I really couldn't get away with a lot. Right. But what he gave me was an opportunity to work on so many different types of projects. I mean, I worked on, helping people drill wells, build pipelines, build bridges, flood protection structure. I mean, we built one of the first floodgates in Terrebonne Parish. I mean, really had the opportunity to work on a multitude of projects and get a great experience technically.
Projects that were life-changing, to the Terrebonne residents.
Sure. I'll tell you a story. I worked on the first project I got to work on was the Bayou Little Caillou floodgate structure. If anyone knows Terrebonne, it's down Bayou Little Caillou. We built that structure after Hurricane Juan, built some little levees, and then there was a hurricane came through. I can't remember which one. Yeah. And the system worked. And I remember FEMA wrote a report that said that floodgate structure, which by the way was about $4 million at that time, which was a ton of money, but it saved $60 million in estimated flood damages for that community. And that's when it just clicked for me. This is why I do what I do. Yeah. That's the beauty of our profession for sure. So, but
it's not just designing things, but making improvements that change the quality of life,
enhancing the communities that we're a part of. Yeah, so
that's true.
My father then gave me every opportunity education wise, went out and got a kind of an executive MBA through a engineering council, and really just allowed me to really learn. And then slowly but surely, he just kept giving, he was a master of giving you enough rope to build a rope ladder, but not hang yourself. Yeah. He's the absolute master at it. Unbelievable. And about the, 97 time period, it was like I was really ready to start making my mark on the business. And I think he was getting a little tired. Okay. I think he was
ready for someone to help pull the wagon.
He was ready. His classic, what he's known for is, man, I'm tired of pulling this wagon. Can somebody help me pull this wagon? Meaning between the kids and the business and everything else. And I was like, yep, Dad, I'm ready to help pull this wagon with you. So, and that's a good point. They went on that trip and we survived. I didn't tank it in 2 months.
So by 2000, you're then president and CEO.
Yeah.
And there's this interesting saying that we've all heard that says the first generation makes it, the second generation grows it, and the third generation blows it, right? And so that certainly does not apply to you. And in fact, the growth that has transpired at TBS since you became CEO is really just incredibly impressive. I know your target you'd mentioned is like 10% a year, and you guys have been able to pull that off through some of the craziest times, seemingly.
for a rock solid 20 years. Now, a few years are higher, a few years lower,
Sure.
but if you look at it, we set our target growth goals every year for 10%. But I'll go back. I give credit to my dad, again, my mentor, my boss, where, again, hard work, but then entrepreneurship. I did not take this business for granted at all. Just always this drive to always learn and do better, always make your community better, right? I mean, the idea that you can build a floodgate for $4 million and a storm comes through and you save 60 is just a small example of what we knew we wanted to do.
Well, look, it seems that when you took that position, you came in with a plan, like you were going to make your mark. There was going to be, it was going to be noticeable what you were going to do. And I really wanted to spend some time kind of talking about that. But why don't we start with seeing if you can define your leadership style?
Well, my leadership style, there's no doubt that I'm the visionary, is the best way to put it. Okay. I absolutely am the big picture person. I am the optimistic planner, is what I like to call it. I have whiteboards everywhere. I come up with 10 ideas a day. Not all of them are good. Okay. So you got to watch who you surround yourself with, because you got to weed through those. You need people to help you weed through it. But I am definitely an optimistic planner, I think, because I live at 30,000 feet. I can come down when I need to, but I'm better here. I just spend a lot of time making sure I surround myself with folks that a little bit lower down to reality, to say that's a great idea, Kenny, or quite honestly, that's not such a good idea. I'll tell you a little story about the growth and expansion of the firm, and I'll give my dad full credit. So my father, Clifford, is really a larger than life guy. Go figure. Very well known, very powerful. Can walk into a room and take all the air out of it in a heartbeat, even at 85 years old if he wants to. Okay. And the first part of my career, I wanted to make my mark, but I didn't want to be one of Clifford's sons. It was, and quite honestly, doing what he did, I was, that's Clifford's son. That's Clifford's son. So I literally spent the half of my career trying to branch out and make sure I wasn't one of Clifford's sons. Oh, wow. And you know how life is so interesting and unique, Andrew, is now here in the second part of my career, I am spending every single minute, every second that I can, making sure I'm one of Clifford's sons. Oh, wow. It's really, I step back, in age and a little wisdom. I'm still working on that part, but it's like, wow, I spent so much time trying to grow and expand the business, which thank God we did, especially in today's world. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily an MBA class as much as psychologically wanting to make my own mark. A lot of folks will, before they come back to a family business, they'll go out and they'll learn and they'll work somewhere else. Very common. And then come back. I had never done that. It's like, man, I got out of college. My bags were packed. I'm coming back to Houma, right? I'm going to work at TBS. So
several things that you put into play I found fascinating. One is that inverted org chart.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the idea that we call ourselves the True Matrix organization, and the idea that myself and my team are there to support the organization, that we provide the resources and support that all the other folks need to focus towards on the client. That's the idea. So on the top of our org chart are senior project managers, or what we call client champions, the closest to the client, right? And everybody else's job is to try to provide the support they need so that they can go and take care of the client, truly earn the trust from our clients. But in true Kenny fashion, we call it a matrix organization chart. So, who do I report to? What am I working on? I don't know what you're working on today. So you literally can be parts of several different project teams on a given day. So you're not necessarily locked into just working on a bridge or just working on a sewer system or just doing pipeline work. We have certain experts in each one of those fields, of course, but when you start getting to support level technicians, you can move around. For me, we call it dotted lines. I call it built-in level of chaos. To me, that's exciting because that's what I got to do in my career. I mean, I went from working on multiple projects and I thought it was great. As the firm grows, that gets a little more difficult to do because you've got to have more and more specialty people to work on the bigger, more meaningful projects that we really want to work on. But that's how it was all came. We very proud of that. Yeah, that's a unique one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, let's take a quick break there and get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Mr. Kenny Smith, CEO of T. Baker Smith. So, Kenny, you've talked about there being a number of ways to grow your business in this book. I think you have it narrowed down to about 5 ways. And you start with growing the existing talent of your associates. Can you walk us through how you look at opportunities for growth in your business?
Right. So since I took over in 2000, our number one method of growth, hand down, has been people. Get when we call the right people, which is not that they're wrong people, but they're right cultural fit for the firm. Then you help identify their talents and their passions. You help improve those talents or their knowledge skills. Then you find work. You put those talents and works you put those talents and passions to work on projects that help improve the community, right? And so we call that cultivating people, grow. So if you come be a part of TBS, we're going to want you to grow. Okay.
And in fact, when I get an email from you, there's your signature at the end with hashtag cultivating people.
Cultivating people.
Right.
That's it. And there's multiple ways to grow, and different people grow different ways, but we want you to grow. If you grow, it's a win-win. Good for you, good for us, and we can provide a fulfilling place to work for you with a professional career. Then, of course, we can grow in what we offer. Okay, which of course for a guy like me, that's like being in a candy store, right. Whether it's all the investments we've made in unmanned aerial systems with all the drones and the technology, or we do a ton of offshore hydrographic surveying and the technology associated with there. We do different type of laser scanning. We have a multitude of different service groups, we call them, subsurface utility engineering, which utilizes different type of technologies to locate underground and map underground utilities. So and we're always looking for those type of stuff. If sometimes we're maybe a little too far out on that, okay? Then there is geographic expansion. The beauty of our business right now is with the technology has changed everything. The collaboration technology, the cloud technology. So, you mentioned all the different offices. An office isn't what it used to be to open, at least in our business. If you've got a good high-speed internet connection, a pretty robust workstation, you've got an office. Okay, as I mentioned, we've got 4 people working with us in Dallas right now. I asked them if they wanted an office. They were like, "Oh, no. We got it dialed in. We're working from our house. It all works out fine." I'll tell you an interesting story there. The gentleman that runs our marine positioning, our offshore survey group, moved from Lafayette to Dallas for family reasons. And the further he gets away from the Gulf of Mexico, the better job he does. I wanted to know if they were moving to Colorado next year. So technology has been a real game changer for us as far as how you grow and expand. It's interesting. We've had a marine coastal engineer working out of her apartment in Florida. We have a offshore marine geologist, actually one of the best in the region, works out of his house in I think it's South Dakota. Okay, so technology has changed everything, and the idea for us, we opened the office in Prairieville here several years back, and because we wanted to be near LSU. We actually, in our business plan we wrote at the time, we call it a talent depot. The idea that we can get really good folks to join the firm and leverage technology, and they can work on projects all over the place. So what is that? That's 3 of them. What did we talk about? We said
4. And I think the last one was acquisitions.
Acquisitions, yeah. We actually, something that we've prided ourselves on growing organically by bringing on new technologies. But what the realization is that for us, acquisitions is relatively new, but we just just did our first one, bought Naismith Marine Services down in Corpus, or they're located in Rockport. They like to make sure we mention Rockport. That has been a great addition for us in our ports practices, and those guys are heavy in surveying, so we can bring environmental and survey services to their existing clients. So those are the strategic type of moves that we're looking to do to continue to grow. At the beginning of this year, we set a 10-year growth target for the next decade, which, by the way, is the 12th decade of the firm.
Oh, my goodness.
It's hard to imagine that.
Yeah.
I keep saying, as long as I'm just trying not to tank it on my watch, Although I did have somebody said, Kenny, y'all like crabgrass, man. You just can't kill it. It's like, ooh, okay, well, that maybe. So I'm not as good as I think I am, all right? Just crabgrass. Excellent. So, but we are definitely looking to strategic right acquisitions is still something that's absolutely in our future.
So I've been able to keep up with some of your technology that you bought on in the last few years through your social media posting, and it just so high tech and so impressive looking. But it's interesting to consider. I learned in this book again, there was about a 50 or 60 year period where there was almost no change in technology. And when you compare that to what's going on now, couldn't be,
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah.
So when I was in high school working at the firm, I was using some of the same tools that my grandfather used. I still have his slide ruler to this day and used it in high school. Interesting, when I got out of college in '86, our senior project was setting up the very first PC lab at Louisiana Tech. Timing was everything. That was just perfect for me, and was able to bring that back. And I remember, as soon as we could afford one, we bought our first computer. I conned my dad. I said, look, we need this computer, an HP desktop computer. And I can remember we put it in the office, and we, at that time, everybody had drafting tables, right? I mean, everybody was drafting. We took the table and we laid it down, and we put this computer on the drafting table, and everybody was walking by in the hall. Oh, look at that. And my dad was like, well, wait a minute. You got that computer. Okay, good. How much I paid at an hour? I said, nothing. He goes, that can work all night, right? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, I like that thing. That's true. It took him a while, but he's absolutely caught on. But technology has changed so much. And for us, one of our, not only do I like technology, actually, I love it, right, but how do we put it to work for our clients? How do we innovate with it? And we now actually have a group of we have to call our Innovative Solutions Group, which is a bunch of, GIS and we nerds, I call them computer nerds, and always working with our PMs trying to figure out what can we do. We have 2 interesting projects right now. One of them is dealing with a levee district or a drainage district. They were looking for ways to try to predict They thought they were looking for a drainage model to try to predict, how much do we need to pump down water when a storm is coming. Right. And we were able to not give them a model, but instead we built them a monitoring system. So we have all these sensors out at their different pump stations and inside the forced drainage system. Again, all data modems, all in the cloud. They can monitor their water elevations. They can see real time if a pump is running or not running. And also we can overlay, look, you projected to have 3 inches of rain in the next 72 hours. And if you don't want Mrs. Boudreaux's house to flood at the end of the lane, pump the system down to this amount. So wow. Another project we have is in the port of Corpus Christi, where they have a lot of siltation. Okay. And they consistently having to survey and monitor and dredge to get ships in and out. And we're putting a system together with a group of sensors that'll real time monitor the siltation next to the docks so that they'll know much quicker when they need to go out and dredge, because every minute that a ship is not at the dock costs real money.
So real data versus a model
right.
of what could
Correct.
happen.
Yeah.
So you have an interesting philosophy on client relationships, this commodity versus strategic relationships. I was wondering if you could shed a little light on that for us.
Yeah, we've set a goal. We want 85% of our clients to be what we have defined as strategic clients. And quite honestly, we can't afford to be commodities. We cannot be the low cost provider. Normally those are people that, and they're good folks that do really good work that way, but they'll just do surveying. They'll just do a design. They'll just do environmental work. We look for clients that want someone to integrate these all together and hopefully provide a better solution. We want to earn your trust. And we, as an engineer, I've actually set up a model and with parameters on how we measure the trust that we've earned with the clients. So wow. That's part of, and it's interesting, even though we're 107 years old, this year is really forcing us to step back and make sure we know who we are, make sure we revise and revamp our core focus. What do we do? What do we really want to do? Take a good look at our 10-year target. Is it achievable? What's our 3-year plan? We really want to look at, by the way, what's our marketing strategy here? Who are the clients we actually want to work with? So although we're 107 years old and you think, well, maybe it's just on cruise control, I don't think there's such a thing in a business. You have to continuously, maybe not reinvent yourself, but you have to continuously refocus, refine, clarify. And we're actually going through that right now recommunicate that message. We've got a lot of different things going on. That's fine. Time to really simplify and get focused again. I think that's what this year we didn't have to do that in 18 and 19. 19 was a pretty good year. 2020 was the wake up calls. Look, it's time for us to I don't want to say reinvent. I call it refine TBS to make sure we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a little change of gears here. But you mentioned you're one of 7.
Yep.
You're the sole owner of TBS. How does that happen? Like for a lot of people, interested in business, listen to the podcast, and that's not an easy thing to do, right?
No, it is. It wasn't, and it still isn't, for sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, I went off to school. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an engineer. I wanted to be a part of TBS. I did it. Came back to school, went to worked about 10 years, and was like, well, I'm actually kind of good at this. Okay. Maybe they got something here. None of my other brothers and sisters decided to go that career path. They all went other ways. And,
So let me pause it. Okay. So that being the case, you got 7. I'm one of 7 as well. In fact, when I look at the timeline, my family and my siblings and yours line up pretty well, which is really interesting. Yeah. So I can relate to this. But if you have one of the siblings does what you do and gets involved in the business, you can't carry that for the other 6. You have to do something, as soon as it's identifiable and you can act on it. Otherwise, in other words, they have a value for their shares, but you have to do something about that. You can't go 20 years or 30 years and after building it up and then buying it at that point. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So I had, by this time and by 2000, and, we had really set my course and was growing the business. And, my dad had a plan that said upon his death, Kenny was going to buy y'all out. Okay. But that was back when he didn't think he was going to live forever. Okay. He had made it through the 80s, which he thought was going to kill him. Okay. But it didn't. So here we are in the 2000s. And what really, Andrew, we were growing and got to the point where, okay, I'm going to borrow some money to grow the business. And, we borrowed some money, but then all of a sudden that we needed more money. We were going to grow even more. And said, well, Kenny, we want you to personally endorse this note. And I was like, whoa, okay. I started looking at it. It's like, wow, wait a minute. I got to start thinking about my family, not just the firm, not just growing the family. So anyway, I give my father complete kudos and credit because at this point we'd all kind of gotten our own personalities. We all kind of got our own families and going our own different ways. So there was some different thoughts about what needed to do. But my dad, again, I can't thank him enough and give him enough credit. Yeah. He says, look, Kenny's here. This is what we need to do. We were able to work out a deal and I was able to buy him out over time and then move us forward. So that's a simplified version of a very interesting story, but I give my father full credit for pulling it off for sure.
Okay. Another similarity that we have, you have 4 daughters.
Yep.
I have 3. So what does generation 4 look like for, do you have a vision for, how TBS continues beyond your tenure?
Oh, that's a great question, Andrew. Yeah, that is the biggest question I have out there. Yeah.
By the way, I do not have mine resolved.
Okay.
I don't have mine figured out yet.
It's interesting. In the last, so I'm 58 years old. Okay. Yeah. When I was 48, I was living forever 10 years ago. Right. So 58 and we're wrapping up 2019 and, it's like, okay, so I have 4 beautiful daughters. I have a couple of son-in-laws now. They're pretty good too, but but what I really got out to deal was 4 unbelievable grandkids, right? The next stage in life. So to actually start, where do we go? So I don't have a 4th generation to hope to bring on like my dad did.
Right.
So being the type of business that we are, very family oriented, we really want you to come to work and offer you a career. We're exploring all the options. Yeah. There's several options out there, but right now today, I would tell you the idea that we could potentially transform into an ESOP is something that's very high on my list. Yeah. But that I've given myself a couple more years to really make that decision and start implementing it, right? Those things don't happen small. Right. Those things don't happen quick for a 200, 300 person firm. Or if we hit our growth goals, it'll be even a bigger challenge to do it. But definitely something we're thinking out. It is, that's the next biggest challenge I have in my career, Andrew, is how do I make sure TBS lives on beyond me? Right. And the namesake is very important to us right now.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this on this podcast before, but starting a business is a huge part of the process, obviously, but ending it is also a real thing to have to figure out. Yeah. Another change of gears here, but I wanted to see if you could give us a little insight into some of your philanthropic activities and your Spark Foundation. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So one of my core beliefs, something I read many, many, many years ago that just stuck with me, and although my dad didn't tell me it, I saw it in him, is that, we all got to pay rent in our time here on earth, right? And the more you're blessed with, the more rent you got to pay. Right. Well, I don't know about you, but I look in my life and I got a lot of rent to pay. So, giving back to the community, being a part of the community, and honestly with my dad throughout all these years, that's just something we've always done. So, it was ingrained as part of our culture at the business, where we would, always pick a charity. We would, do something, right? Especially around Christmas, we would do this. And we started the firms. I tell them, look, if y'all go out and, they do a little things like a bake sale, they do some type of fundraiser, they do car wash, they do small, that if you guys go out and raise $10, the firm's going to match you $10. So, and that really took off.
Wow.
And it really is just, part of our culture is that we're going to be engaged in the communities that we're part of, not just building a bridge, not just a flood protection, but we're going to be engaged. And what I like to do is each one of those offices, I let them chase their passion. Okay. So, I know for me, personal education, whether it's the Terrebonne Foundation for Academic Excellence, which I was fortunate enough to put together, where we get grants down into the classrooms. Fantastic program, unbelievable. In Stafford, it's Habitat for Humanity. In Metairie, I forget, there's a home for abused women so everyone has their own thing. So years ago, all of a sudden, this started really taking off, and the amount of money we were dealing with, was really starting to get up there. I say, you start talking about 40, 50 grand, and people putting cash in jars, I was like, oh, that's when we decided we take this to the next level. And we started Spark, which they named a group of people, Social Purpose and Responsibility Crew, right? Which I think is great.
Yes.
And it's been fantastic. So it's this foundation my wife and I run. We have a committee, a Spark committee inside the organization. The latest thing we did was, again, feeling so blessed living in Houma that the late Hurricane Laura didn't affect us. Barely. I mean, I had 3 feet of water under my fishing camp in Cocodrie. That was the biggest problem I had. So we really put Spark to work. And within about 3 days, we raised 10 grand, and we got it to the charity, community, Southwest Louisiana Community Foundation. Sarah Hudson over there, lady that I've been knowing for a while. And, they were able to get it right into some people's hands to hopefully make a little bit of a difference, So it's definitely been a part of ours. We were very excited to partner with your foundation and do a bike. That was awesome. People still talk about it. We need to do some more. I promise you we would.
It was a great, what I saw of that experience, it was a great team building event for your associates.
It
right?
was.
I mean, and you could see it. It was really cool. So
giving back. We're going to give back to our communities. That's another one of those, core values. That's one of the, family and community spirit is a big part of being an associate at TBS.
You guys have done some really amazing things. Mm-hmm. I've seen a list printed out of all the different organizations that have benefited from your generosity. It's really long.
So it's a little different than yours. You guys focus, which is so impressive, unbelievable. In true Kenny fashion, we don't focus on one thing, but it gets down to people's passion.
Yeah.
If that's your passion, like we had one guy actually in Houma, Toys for Tots. I mean, he loves toys. That's his passion. I said, bring it on. We're going to do it. Somebody else, well, really the food bank, I've seen what the food bank can do. When I was a child, we got food from the food bank, and I know the difference makes.
That's awesome.
Let's do it. We allow people to really chase their passions with it.
Very, very cool, Kenny. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wrap up with a juicy one here for you.
All right.
So you obviously can look back and see your grandfather's legacy, and you can look at your father's legacy. And I'm curious, what do you want to be your legacy?
Oh, great question. Great question. The big difference is the regionalization of the firm. We were able to take a business back, quite honestly, before Katrina. We had one office in Houma, Louisiana. Okay, actually 2. I'm sorry, we had 2. We had one in Thibodaux, which is only 17 miles, by the way. So that's a whole nother story. Yep. But the idea, the vision, the drive to really expand, that we had something going good and that we could expand it, that we could offer a fulfilling place to work to people outside of just Terrebonne, and it'd be better for everyone, that it's a better, stable environment. And I take great pride in that. Again, rooted in the drive not to be one of Clifford's son, but then ironically written back being, that the family spirit, the idea that we're a family, that we're going to take care of people, that we're going to offer you the opportunity to grow and have a fulfilling place to work is actually rooted in my dad. So it's interesting, when I look at my career, how much time and drive I spent not being one of Clifford's sons. And then I can't soak up enough of being one of his sons here in the latter
fantastic part. Well, Kenny, I just can't tell you how much of a fan I am of yours, as I started at the top of the podcast saying, and you're the hardest working guy I know. You've accomplished so many things, and it's just incredibly impressive. And, the thought I had as I was wrapping up your book is what a treasure you are and your company TBS is to the state of Louisiana. And to the extent that Louisiana oil and gas is a resource for the entire country, and you guys serve the oil and gas industry so deeply, is you're really a treasure for our country. And when you look at your family history and everything y'all have accomplished, it's a fantastic thing to witness. And I'm honored to know you and consider you a friend. And again, thank you for your time and sharing all your stories with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
I hope you can tell how much I enjoy doing this podcast. And one reason is I get to meet people like Kenny Smith. And he is a hardworking CEO. He's very dynamic. He's made tremendous strides during his tenure as CEO at T. Baker Smith. And there's this common thread through the generations. That's that incredible work ethic, the resiliency, and their commitment to innovation. And just to watch what Kenny has done over the last 2 decades, it's been very, very impressive. If you'd like to reach out to Kenny, you can find him on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter at T. Baker Smith. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to the Next Entrepreneur podcast. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Mainspring Companies. Can be reached online at mainspringcompanies.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at ask@nxtentrepreneur.com. You can subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can help support our podcasts by leaving a review on Apple Music. You can follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this episode with your family and friends. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. They can be reached at propelyourstory.com. Today's episode was produced by Daniel Sagona.